Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. And this week we continue our look at the Halloween series with the second film to feature Michael Myers, 1981's Halloween 2. And yes, if you're a longtime listener of the Castle Dracula podcast, you are not crazy. We are still here. We've just changed our name, the better to enable us to slip across the border unseen. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the upcoming Ben 10 comic series from IDW. With me from Austin is Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man and a contributing writer to Rockabilly Online and Tales from the Grave for Monsterverse Comics. Say hello,
and Halloween
Drew.
Man from Monsterverse Comics.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Oh,
That's a brand new announcement that you just made this week, right? That
Indeed.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
I'm very excited about that.
So they're going to be rerunning old Halloween Man and also doing some new Halloween Man. Is that right?
New Halloween Man. It's going to be digital at first, and then creeping back into print in 2014.
In case you're wondering, listeners, Halloween Man is basically a Halloween-oriented, superhero zombie. It's just fantastic. It's really, really a wonderful visionary work, and I've written about it a lot, and you can Google search Halloween Man, and that'll rock. All right. Also in Austin, my co-creator of the Victorian mech comic Clockworks, coming in that came out this past in hardback from Humanoids in June. Boy, that was terrible. I'm so sorry. I've rewritten this sentence so many times that it no longer resembles anything like English. But Tony Salvaggio, creator of the Victorian mech comic Clockworks, welcome, and I'm sorry about botching your intro.
That's all right. Okay.
It's really my fault.
Not at all. Not at all. Tony is also the front man for the band Deserts of Mars, so welcome back. And also in Denver, with color commentary, as always, host of the mom-oriented podcast Pod Moms, attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Halloween 2 is a 1981 horror film directed by Rick Rosenthal, written and produced by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. It is the second installment in the Halloween series, and it is a direct sequel to Carpenter's Halloween, immediately picking up where it had left off, set on the same night of October 31, 1978. Of course, it's 3 years later when it's actually being filmed. 1978, as the seemingly unkillable Michael Myers continues to follow Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, to a nearby hospital, while Dr. Sam Loomis is still in pursuit of his patient. So saith Wikipedia. Okay. Let's get some first impressions. We were having a great time chatting with Darren, who's in the chat room and shows up on the Facebook all the time. Let's get some first impressions based on what we were talking about and anything else. Keep it down to about 2 minutes, and then we will go into what we think about it. So let's go Drew, Tony, Julia, and then me. Drew, first impressions, if it's possible, Halloween 2.
This is my third favorite Halloween movie. And as I've said when we did the first film, I really do think there is only 3 Halloween movies that are actually worth watching. This one, the original, and Halloween H2O. Having said that, this time watching this, while I still was very entertained and enjoyed Donald Pleasant's scenery chewing and everything, I found myself a little bit warmed to it than the other times that I had watched this. I don't know why this time around I didn't feel quite as warm and fuzzy to it, but like I said, still enjoyable, but not what I remember. And it has been about like 3 or 4 years since the last time I watched this.
You mean cool to it, right? You're saying
I've cooled to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Drew's cool to it. Didn't like it as much as before. Tony, what are your first thoughts of Halloween 2? I have a feeling this is just going to go downhill from here. What are your opening impressions of Halloween?
I think it's like a decent slasher movie. I have to agree with Drew. It'd been a long, long time since I'd seen this, and when I saw it this time, I was like, it's looks higher budget. There's some more kills. There's some more like, oh my gosh, that's the different kill kind of thing, But in general, I was just kind of meh. So, I mean, it's not bad. it's not a bad slasher movie, but I didn't have the same kind of, oh man, it's a direct sequel. Like, look, it takes place starting on the same night. All of that stuff that I thought was cool before, that didn't matter as much this time. I don't know. I think I agree with Drew.
Julia, what are your first thoughts of Halloween 2?
Hate this movie. I think it's stupid. I didn't like it at all. I don't like that it's much gorier than the first one. I don't like that it's that it doesn't have it's like, because what I liked about the first one is that you don't really see the blood, and it's all mood, and the music is creepy, and he just kind of is in the background of a lot of things. And this one, I just don't like slasher movies, and the first one doesn't feel like a slasher movie like this one does. So I don't like the film. The only thing I like about the film is that it goes by very quickly. except for the 20 or so minutes when the security guard's poking around. I don't know why that part really drags.
It's true. It does clip along. It's only 90 minutes long. I don't remember how long the original movie is, but this is a very short film. Okay, my first impression, if it's a question of how is this as a slasher flick compared with a lot of other slasher movies I've seen, like House and Sorority Row or whatever, it's a perfectly decent slasher film, and it's great to see Michael Myers. I love to see the growth of this guy as a walking motif, as this icon of horror. Having said that, it's so weird. I find it really strange. It's as though they made a sequel to Psycho, but unlike Psycho 2, the actual movie, which attempted to sort of reproduce the mysteries of the original Psycho, if they had just simply made a slasher flick with Norman Bates, it is odd. I mean, so as you're watching it and you're going, it's so strange that they brought Halloween, which is such a masterpiece, down to earth in this way. But having said that, I would rather watch this than many, 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 many other slasher flicks that could turn up. I mean, it's got the music as well, although it's a weird synth version of the music that's not as cool as the 1978.
Yeah, they bring the
and
original
I hate that.
back and the new, but man, that new version, like when I had to double check. I was like, this just sounds. I wasn't a big fan of the redone.
I will say this: the opening credits of this movie are really cool. With the pumpkin splits apart and has a skull inside of it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know if it was just me, but it sounded like because I pay attention to these things. Maybe I'm wrong, but even the new score, it sounded like, I don't know what I was hearing, but I kept hearing it sounded like they were using like a synth with weighted piano keys, and you could hear the thunk thunk in it, and
it's entirely possible. It's just somehow the piano, the piano from 1978 was just really, really well done. There was a lot of electronic stings in there. You'd have that whenever something odd would happen.
Yeah, well,
but nevertheless, it was very electronic.
Too, but it just doesn't sound as cheesy. For some
That's right. That's right. This is a very 1981 cheesy synth score, and in this case, it is not as compelling. It's not as creepy. I think it is possible that you could do. Tony, you could set out and say, "Hey, I'm gonna record, a score for a new horror movie, and I'm deliberately going to do a kind of a cheesy '80s thing, and I think I can figure out a way to make that really creepy." That is not this, though. This is just a genuine attempt at re-recording the original Halloween score in a more awesome way in 1981, which gives you this.
Well, they do one kind of cool thing where they take it for a section or two, they take it down. It's, I don't know if it's an they
true.
take it down, and you're like, hey, that's kind of cool, they're playing with it, but that was one of the first things I noticed was I don't know, it seems weird because it's not like Carpenter's original is, doesn't have, it's got kind of dated sounds, but it works.
Oh, that's
and
wonderful.
When you're updating it, it's not like they didn't try to make it cool, but for whatever reason, it's don't mess with that. I don't know.
Well, it has been done. I mean, John Ottman did a score for Halloween H2O that includes, a full orchestra, and he does a really great arrangement of this theme. and it's fantastic. I mean, it's genuinely, I think, one of the best, horror scores I've ever heard. Seriously, it's a wonderful piece. And it uses the piano score as its sort of base, but it's just very well done. So it's not that you can't do a good version of the Halloween score. It's just that this is a particularly cheesy version, which is a shame. But on the other hand, if you're experiencing this as just part of our cultural history and you want to watch, a popular horror film of 1981, then rock on. This is what music sounded like. Right. and for a lot of our listeners, that'll be before their time, so it'll be truly, a tour of history. All right, we've started way at the back of the line with the score. So why don't we go back to a little bit about Michael Myers and what this movie is about. So just to cue this up, like the 30,000-foot view, this movie features we start immediately after the original movie, and exactly what happens at the end of the first movie happens here, with a few differences that we might get into when we get to talk about Donald Pleasance. But the bottom line is, Michael Myers keeps on killing. Does anybody want to talk about how Michael Myers, who was introduced in the last picture, has changed or not changed when we meet him again here?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, really.
Has Michael Myers really changed? I think the only thing that I feel like as a character has changed, he's got a bigger budget backing his rampage, so now he has special effects.
Which I think actually kills I think that's one of the reasons I don't like the film, is because I think the fact that it was low budget made them so creative and setting mood and being creepy and everything, and this is just like, oh, we have money, let's scald people in a hot tub or whatever. I don't know how that costs more money, but maybe
I'm actually, this is going to seem strange coming from me, I'm actually inclined to agree with that to a point, even though as a fan of makeup effects, I like seeing all that stuff. Although, but honestly, I don't feel like the makeup effects in here they were probably very impressive in 1981, but they're not, they, compared to even other things that were going on at the time, yes. The makeup effects in here are just not that cool. You could have done a lot more with a woman.
This scalding, for instance, could have been a lot more grotesque than it was. It's a horrible, horrible. Just the one that Joy is referencing. Michael Myers sneaks up on a lady and plunges her face into a scalding hot tub, until she dies of, I guess, drowning and scalding. That's horrible. But the makeup is not, to my mind, the makeup doesn't look that impressive.
I do love the horror movie logic of a sign that says, so instead of like making it impossible to turn up past a certain amount, you just go, don't turn this all the way. That'll scald everyone you put into it in a hospital, which you want to have.
I know, that's so ridiculous. Yeah, no, we actually had this conversation a lot, Jason and I, back in when we had babies, because you're told as a parent to set your water heater so it doesn't go high enough that it would hurt a baby. But, of course, my husband likes to have hot baths, so he was really annoyed that I would have to set it low enough so that it wouldn't scald the baby, because that's not hot enough to scald him, and he wants, just below scalding.
I don't think they really have to worry about too much, because apparently there's only 6 people in this entire hospital, and the majority of them are the staff.
That's something else I was going to ask you about. Is Haddonfield Memorial the old hospital nobody goes to?
Except for newborn babies.
There's no beeping. Oh, except for babies, yeah. There's no life support beeping, or a bunch of people who were relatively conscious, coming out of the room going, hey, is life really bad? The lights are off.
Yeah, there's a nursery. It's dark. There's no nurses there. There's babies in there. There's nobody messing with the babies. There's an emergency room. There's nobody smoking in a wheelchair in front of the emergency room. Where are those people? This is not any hospital.
I was going to ask
you, did Michael Myers just kill everyone? See, that would be gruesome.
Even though it was filmed at a hospital, they keep referring to it as the clinic. So maybe it's not a real hospital, except for babies.
Yeah, except for babies, of course, which are perfectly okay with Michael Myers hiding out around them.
Yeah.
He's sneaking around. No giant killer here next to the babies. because the nurses just kind of go by and he like hides behind the door like,
yeah,
he really does
baby,
take
for not
advantage
calling
of the fact
attention.
Yeah, nobody has peripheral vision in this film.
no, at all, not at all.
Okay, I asked a what color am I thinking of question earlier, and for that I apologize. How has Michael Myers changed in this picture?
He's not as creepy. He doesn't just hide around in the background of things. He just walks around.
Well, I mean, so I believe, I truly believe that the deal is that the first movie could not possibly have a sequel, really. The first movie it feels like an urban legend. It's this, hey, there are a bunch of babysitters, they're being stalked by the guy. Sometimes he can be seen and sometimes he can't. He has no backstory at all, particularly, he killed his sister, he's been gone for 15 years, he's back now, and he's killing. This guy in this movie is more human in a sense. He's a little more creative. His outfit has changed. To my mind, this is not the same. This does not look like the same jumpsuit that he had in the first movie. In the first movie, he had that sort of full body mechanics outfit, and it was a sort of, to my eye, it was kind of a dark green, right? And this looks almost like a motorcycle outfit. It flares up at the neck. It doesn't. It's cooler.
Well, and this guy's a lot shorter. The guy who plays Dick Warlock
is that so?
Is a lot shorter than any of the other people who played Michael. So he had to actually wear lifts even. So it could be that that they gave him a different outfit just to make him just to fit better or whatever. The way he got that's funny that trivia says that the way he got the role was that he passed by a room and he saw the Michael Myers mask, and so he just put it on and walked into director Rick Rosenthal's office and just stood there. after Rosenthal continuously asked him who he was and he didn't reply, he finally took off the mask and said, "Can I play Michael Myers?"
Wow.
That's so funny.
Maybe one of the reasons why also he's less scary in this movie is that by now you're used to him, because the inevitable thing about monsters is the more they're around, the more used to them you are, and they start to kind of become your buddy. And this is sort of the start of that with Michael. He's becoming this pop cultural figure, and it's kind of funny. You're talking about having this pop collar, almost like he's becoming the Elvis of the slasher set.
Well, think about it. In Nightmare on Elm Street, you've got Freddy, but those movies continued to be more or less precisely the same over and over. I mean, maybe this is not a fair comparison, but with the exception of Dream Warriors, which really was an unusual one. But generally, Freddy gets into your nightmares and he kills you. He was funny at the beginning and he's funny forever. This is different. This is taking Michael Myers and Laurie and sticking them in an utterly different set where Michael can go on a rampage. I could say that, but you could also go, well, Jason, that's not quite fair, because this could really be just a big urban legend about what if there was a killer loose in a hospital. So I think that it's kind of interesting though that it's in the hospital. It does up it oh man, that could be dangerous, but they don't use that. They don't go oh man, what would happen if somebody was sort of incapacitated and tried to escape from Michael Myers?
Well, except for her. I mean,
but
Laurie.
there's a whole hospital. Regardless, Darren's kind of right. Hey, it is Halloween, and there's still people in there who are under observation, people who have recovered from surgery, unless it truly is a clinic, people in-out clinic. But it doesn't seem like that because there's babies.
No, this is a full-on hospital. It's enormous.
The fact that it's even set in a hospital sort of takes away from I think this is one of the things that I found myself disliking this go around, was the fact that it is set in a hospital takes away from the overall vibe of it being on Halloween.
Right.
The first one, you have this, you're slapped in the face with the idea of Halloween in the first one.
There's and there's kids trick-or-treating, and there's pumpkins.
And there's some of that in here, but pretty much once you get into the nitty-gritty of the hospital and the people that work there, outside of some decorations in the background and the fact that the guy is watching Plan 9 from outer space on TV, you don't really think about it being Halloween.
Right.
Is Michael magical? This is my other question.
Absolutely. The guy has been shot and stabbed and all kinds of things have happened to him numerous times, numerous times. And, I mean, it's possible. I would have thought that he was wearing a bulletproof vest, except that he actually gets shot in the head even. I mean, he gets shot in the eyes.
Oh,
so
what I like is an untrained person with a gun shoots him in both eyes. Like, that's hell of grouping. That's awesome. Doesn't shoot him in the forehead, I guess, or in the, that was a decently caliber weapon that Loomis gives her.
You just need the motivation,
Yeah. But, I was like, because she's like, I don't want this gun. Ha-ha, both eyes. Pong, pong.
Yes.
In two
that
shots.
was truly remarkable. She handled it. I mean, it's hard for most people with one of those guns, to hit like a stop sign or indeed the side of a barn. But no, she's able to put 2 bullets in 2 eyeballs. That's or
as one of the characters on Scandal says, you couldn't hit the side of the barn from the inside.
Right.
I like I still agree that if at this point no one would care and you could completely plead insanity if you ever encountered something like a Michael Myers, if you chop its head off or whatever you need to do, it's okay. Like,
Tony,
it's not
I've noticed.
But yes.
Well, he finally seems to die when he's burned up, but I suppose that remains to be seen if he actually.
Right.
Well, he comes back for several more sequels, so I think it just slows him down a little bit.
I want to get to the ending in a little bit because I want you guys to explain to me how exactly he manages to come back.
Well, he's not. I don't think Michael Myers he is supernatural, but I feel like he's lightly supernatural. Yeah. Like you have characters like Freddy and Jason and Chucky who are very overtly supernatural beings. Like Chucky's a doll, Freddy's this dream ghost thing.
He's Jason just an immortal. He's an immortal. Like
he's just evil.
Yeah. You know what's sad too is no one bothered to tell Donald Pleasance that it's not Sam Hain.
Yeah.
That saw it. It's like I didn't know when I was a kid and saw.
I would never have known that.
I always referred to Danzig's band as Sam Hain, and then I found out, hey, wait, that's wrong. But no.
Well, but you know what? I know a lot of people.
It.
I know a lot of people who know all their stuff from reading and don't pronounce things correctly when they say them out loud because they've read everything, but they haven't necessarily talked to people or heard scholars. So he may have just read that.
I understand, but
did John Carpenter know? I mean, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill wrote the screenplay. Did they know, or did they just look up a little bit of Celtic mythology and were like,
well, they weren't on the set anyway, so even if they had known.
But that was just one of the things I noticed, which, like I said, for years I didn't know.
Well, here's a Marvel No Prize that will make you feel better about that. If you listen to British actors, traditional British actors, they pronounce everything in the Queen's English, no matter what language it's born of. So they'll say Miguel de Cervantes,
Dos Equis, beer.
Dos Equis. They'll actually in a bar order Dos Equis. So it's conceivable that they would have said, "Oh, it's Samhain," and he'd go, "Bite me, it's Samhain."
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to have seen that conversation. I would watch that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I love Loomis's character. I'm not quite sure why he can't throw lighter into the. We'll get into that at the end, but there's some questionable decisions. But I like his, steadfastness, and this is really, really bad, and we're gonna do whatever it takes to take this down.
Well, apparently, according to this documentary we're watching, that Donald Pleasance actually does kind of do a lot of bite me, we're doing it this way kind of stuff. Because he's the only one with a lot of experience and kind of legitimacy. So he'd come in and he'd be like, "Yeah, no, this is how this is going to go," and they'd be like, "Okay." That's what you say.
You know who I am? I'm Donald Pleasance.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, that's the transition that he made because Donald Pleasance came on to the first movie, and he was the biggest star there, and he was given a lot of deference, and he was clearly sort of above the part. But after doing a couple of them, he told the director, Mustafa Akkad, he goes, "I'll do 20 of these things." He was like, it had dawned on him that this was a neat part. It didn't really matter if the movie was dumb or not dumb. Donald Pleasance had a part for life that he could keep coming back and doing. And I
like this eternal. In fact, I was thinking on this one, I would love a cat and mouse Loomis, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, like, Jodie Foster, kind of like cat and mouse Loomis, Michael Myers thing. Like,
yes.
I would watch that over, forget everything else. This is just a show about, I don't know how long.
Well, we're going to do H2O, and I think it would be interesting to add, when we do H2O, which is 20 years later, we'll probably have to ask, like, we know that Loomis will have died in the interim, but we presume he kept looking for Michael, and my question is, where the heck did Michael go? Michael is, all intents and purposes, he's quite evil, but he's also a human being. So he can't be, eating dogs all the time. So where does he literally go for the next 20 years after this? I have no idea. But both of these characters somehow are going to survive.
He's like a bouncer at a bar.
Yeah.
And he's
I know plenty
he
of
works
plenty
as a janitor, creepy janitor.
Yeah, it is. Lord, you can actually kind of imagine, if Michael Myers were living in your neighborhood and actually, maybe he's actually pretty useful. Maybe he turns out to be sort of an easygoing guy. He's like leading the Boy Scout troop or something. Hasn't been killing in years. That's all.
I bet he could work at a junkyard.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I believe that. He's shooting rats.
Well, when he's not in his persona of the shape, does he talk?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I doubt it.
Apparently he sat there for 15 years and didn't speak and didn't even move. And
well, maybe that's what he did. Maybe he's just like, all right, it's back. It's like how you see Dracula sometimes, where he shuts down for a while and then comes back.
Yeah.
Maybe Michael Myers is like, man, that burning, that really sucked. I'm going to take some time off.
Yeah.
maybe, or as far as we know, he recovered from the burning and that took forever. I forgot which Dracula it was who had something happen, and then it took years and years and years, and he was buried.
Well, the Hammer movies do a lot of that, where Dracula will get destroyed, and then he'll literally, sort of crawl away into something and hibernate for a while. You're right, Michael could have buried himself or crawled into a cave like an Anne Rice vampire. So we also find out something really interesting, which is that whereas in the original, Laurie was just the luckiest and smartest girl among her pack, in this movie, there's a really, really big plot twist where we find out that Laurie has suppressed memories of visiting Michael when he was a child in the hospital, and it turns out that Laurie is Michael's blood sister.
Yeah. And
that's new. And so Loomis now, it's not, hey, he's just evil. It's, oh, don't you see he's killing his family. And so Michael now is going to come after him.
I still that he does not ever really try to kill Laurie all that hard. Like, even when he's trying to kill it, like when he's in the first movie when he slashes her arm, I mean, is he blind at that point? Can he not see that her back is right in front of him and she could have stabbed him in the back? Stuff like that where he just kind of does. And then when she's crawling out the window and he's kind of half-ass slashing at her with the scalpel, I just don't feel like he ever really commits to killing Laurie. I think it's kind of always
but he
really
certainly
like a game.
did kill his older sister.
Yeah, when he was a tiny kid, but now he might be like, she's all I've got left, so I kind of just want to mess with her.
I don't really think he has any holds her in any special regard in terms of killing her, except that maybe he has this fixation. But
I like how she pleads to him, and he's like, I'm gonna still kill you. Like, he cocks his head and he thinks about it for a second.
Yeah, she calls him by name, and that really intrigues him.
Yeah, he does this little.
But on the other hand, he came and stabbed the crap out of her mattress before realizing she wasn't in it.
Maybe he did realize it, though. The thing is, he is kind of magical, so maybe he did feel like, she's not really. I don't know. The point is, I think subconsciously he wants to keep the game going. I don't think he wants it to be over, because once he kills her, then what else is he supposed to do? I mean, he's that's his big mission right now.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well,
point by the way to Darren in the chat room for giving us the idea that he worked at the Silver Shamrock Company.
I actually,
I will have to say that's pretty.
that joke
That's
only
pretty
really works
good.
if you know Halloween 3. But yes, that's brilliant. I love that idea.
I do.
I love,
I do like
you know,
that.
he'd be like sweeping, and he'd be like whistling the theme tune. 8 more days to Halloween, and it's,
Or he does slick up, like we said, and becomes an executive in charge of actually releasing that product.
That's a wonderful.
That would be amazing. That's
This
where he
is
was
the
hiding.
best Halloween fan fiction ever written.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of feel like he does. I think he wants her dead. I believe that's certainly the theory that the movies have, and that's because in the the next movie when Michael comes back, which is like literally like 7 years after this, they take a long break between Michael Myers pictures. But when Michael comes back, he chases his niece, which I think is supposed to be Laurie's daughter. I don't remember. I haven't seen Halloween 4. I don't know. Any of you guys have any of you guys seen that picture?
Not in a long time, like really long.
There was
Jamie
is
the name of the character. But
there's a point where had seen all of those, and I watch them quite frequently. But I really don't like any but the sequels that I've missed, other than Donald Pleasance, who's legitimately great in every single one of these. But
do they have mood? I mean, it seems to me, how hard can this be to even get like at least 60% right? Put it in neighborhoods, have lots of leaves, have pumpkins, have Michael Myers running around. How hard is this?
I feel this is something I've always said, and people can disagree with me. The two characters that were both Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees are somewhat based on Leatherface, which is these mute, unstoppable.
Thank you for saying
beings.
that. Because people are always saying that this is the first of the slasher type, but you're right. When did Leatherface come around?
Leatherface, I believe, was 71. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think, is 71. So
early 70s.
Several years before Halloween.
It's the beginning of the decade, and Michael comes around at the end. So yeah, there was plenty of time for him to be inspired by Leatherface.
I feel like as a pop cultural character, the Friday the 13th movies got better and more entertaining as they went on, because they have this sort of EC Comics absurdity to them, where it's fun. It's bad taste, but it's fun bad taste.
Yeah.
There's always this attempt to be a little bit above that with the Halloween movies, and I think to a degree, with the exception of this one and H2O, which actually have a little bit more going for them. They're not trashy enough to be trashy fun, and they're not good enough to be cerebral horror. So
what an amazing thing to say. That I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you might really be onto something. I mean,
that and Jason looks cooler than Michael Myers.
I don't know about that.
I think Michael Myers looks way cooler than Jason, because I think that mask is so weird. Whereas a hockey mask is a hockey mask, By the way, we were watching this thing, this documentary, and it kind of showed like just a bunch of little clips from movies that were inspired by Halloween, and it shows this clip of Jason with his teeth showing, like it's like part of the mask has been kind of cut away, and obviously his face. Yeah. And I was just wondering if that's something that is like, I don't know. I mean, we're not talking about the film, but anyway.
Jason Voorhees is deformed under his mask. Like he is, and that's one of the reasons why I say he's like, if you look at have an action figure of Michael Myers and an action figure of Jason Voorhees, the action figure of Jason's inevitably going to look cooler because there's so much more monstrous features going on, because he's got this mouth-shaped head sometimes, because he's also undead. You have bits and pieces of rotting flesh coming off. Like he's cartoonish. Okay. Like Michael Myers is not cartoonish.
I'm sure this was the part. I'm looking at a diagram. We were looking at the Part 7 mask where it's torn on the lower quarter, so that
from New Blood.
I think that's right. Anyways,
but that does answer my question to some extent. That he's got.
It's also torn in part 9.
Part of his flesh. But anyway, mask-wise, though, I think that Michael Myers' mask is so awesome. I mean, it's just so
Michael Myers' mask is perfect for him. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that they should redesign it, because they did in the Rob Zombie films, and I think that was a mistake, because Michael Myers benefits from being blank.
Right.
But I think the only it takes a certain artistic quality as a director to really show that off in a way that it's going to be menacing. And most of the sequels are not artistic, but they're trying to be. Like, they have lesser directors trying to reach for this level that they're never going to get.
Well, let me ask you this thing about... Oh, go ahead.
I agree as well. Although, for me, I mean, my personal taste is, like, 3 of Friday the 13th is my highlight. Like, I'm fine. I would be fine with that being the last one. But,
yes.
But Halloween, like, I still like, and I was talking to a friend of mine actually last night, like, I still like the end of 5 especially. Like, I like the build up, and the end is just awesome.
Halloween 5,
however, drops. Yeah, 6, however.
So for those of us who have not seen Halloween 5, what's so great about the end of Halloween 5?
Well, there's this whole thing, and maybe again, like, this is where I kind of, go back on myself, because on one hand I said, hey, Michael Myers doesn't need more backstory other than he's true evil. But they start to try it in 5. They start to try to make a backstory where he's there's like a cult, and they have something to do with him. There's this guy who you keep seeing throughout in this trench coat and hat. He's this mysterious dude, and you're like, hey, who's that guy? Well, they capture Michael Myers finally, and you're like, whoa, they capture Michael Myers. He busts him out, and it's cool. There's like backlit. There's gunfire. It's like a section of the scene like from Terminator where Schwarzenegger busts into the cop. It's kind of like, it's not that, but it has that kind of feel, like grand. And then in 6 they just totally spin off into Crazy Land, and nothing kind of builds off of that in a way that is good. But when I first saw 5 and I saw that part, I was like, oh man, that was pretty cool. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
But in fact, I like that scene a lot more than I think anything I saw in 2. But again, I
have to say, I really do love this point at the end where he's blinded and he's just slashing.
Yes.
Madly, because it just shows how determined he is to end these people.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
really
great.
They're really terrible. Like, at that point, just duck away. Like, he's doing what he should do as Michael Myers, but even Loomis, who's like normally smart, you're just like watching him like, dude, what are you doing? Everything you're doing in this scene is the dumbest thing you can do right now. And
Roger Ebert had a phrase about
him and Jamie Lee Curtis are like, why? Okay, you're distracting him, but it's the dumbest looking. Like, they don't move, they don't like try to sneak away.
No, it's very false.
It's really like
Michael seems perfectly logical. It's sort of impressive, but I mean, at the end, Michael is blinded and he's slashing blindly around because he's just going to keep trying to kill even
or point blank, just keep shooting him in the face.
Yes.
No matter what, like if it's
that's
a high enough caliber,
this
is a high enough caliber weapon, you're going to obliterate whatever's there. Don't like, oh man, he's slashing towards me. I'm going to hit you. No, you're not. It's like, that is, oh man, that part's so frustrating to watch.
But I want to ask something actually, and then we can return to the end. But this whole question of backstory, where you start, I'm trying to put my finger on how you would write the rule, what the law of horror movies is that we can glean from this. Because it seems to me first movies in a horror series always are like extremely universal, and the backstories are the bare minimum required to get the creeps out of the story. And then we have this deep need to keep adding more. And I don't understand why we need to keep adding more. I mean, maybe it's because people always ask these funny, like we always ask questions. What does Michael do here, and why does he do this? So maybe that's why. But we keep adding stuff, and so each of the sequels adds more and more to the mythology. And I feel like probably the more mythology we create, the less interesting a story comes to be.
Well, also, I mean, they are, like, for better or worse, a lot of times people go, oh, there's no growth in this character, there's no development. But I think maybe that's the point. Like, we sometimes miss that, is there doesn't have to be growth and development
right.
in the supernatural villain.
Well, yeah, and here's where we get to...
Sometimes it's cooler, like you learn, like, oh, man, that's a pretty cool twist.
Yeah.
But in general, it's harder to do. Plus, you go back and forth, and people will complain about everything, but for the most part, you aren't watching Halloween so that you can watch a character grow and become... I mean,
right.
Well, they make really good redemption stories, and they make really good arcs of, there's certain things that the characters become in arcs.
But the more universal
that's
they
not
are...
the main, you're not watching this for the same reason you may watch,
Dog Day Afternoon.
Before, before
I mean,
Sunrise or whatever.
Tony, if you're watching Halloween, I think we, even as guys, you associate yourself with Laurie. So really, honestly, the less you know about Laurie, the less about Laurie that you know that's not purely universal. Young, American, middle class, has, some jobs, good kid, goes to school. All that stuff we could kind of say more or less about most of us. The
right.
gender is different. But generally, hey, that could be me. So you're watching it. The more specific you get about any character, like say, oh, well, actually, her dad's in the CIA. Or, oh, well, actually, she takes judo or whatever.
Actually, she's the sister of the serial killer.
Actually, she's the sister of the serial killer. The more specific you get about any character, the less you get to associate yourselves with them. And then after a while...
I disagree with that, but unfortunately, I can't defend my position until we do H2O.
Lay it on me. That's okay. All right.
You
all right.
can't.
Okay. Well, all right. But what I'm saying actually is totally wrong when you think in terms of most action movies, because if you look at James Bond, most of us can't really relate to James Bond. James Bond comes from a certain background. He was in the Royal Navy, and then he's a spy, and he's all this stuff, and he has all these skills. And there's no part of it where you go, hey, that's me up there. You're just enjoying watching James Bond. But with an effective horror movie, I kind of feel like you are putting yourself universally in that person's place. So maybe the same thing is with the bad guys. Oh, go ahead, Drew.
I do think you have to keep, for a horror movie to be effective, you have to keep your protagonists mortal to a degree.
Yeah.
Like even with like a character like Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, you never really worry for him. So they have to dream up these other people in the film to be in harm's way. Like there's this monster hunting subgenre, which I even write in. Characters like Blade and Hellboy, and those are never, even though they have monsters and they have horror trappings, those are never really horror, truly. Laurie Strode and characters like her, I think the thing that I will agree with you on is by keeping them down to earth, you keep them in harm's way. And that's very important in telling a true horror story.
Yeah. Wow.
I agree with that.
Well, what do you think about with bad guys? So if we take this theory that we're debating back and forth, where if specificity makes something more distant from us, then is that the case for the bad guys as well? In other words, if in the beginning, in the first, Michael is just a shape, he's just pure evil that happens to be inhabiting a kid's body. And the fact is, the more I say words like, it's evil, but it's inhabiting a human body or whatever, that's already beginning to do something that Joseph Campbell calls concretizing the myth, where The myth is what works, and the more I try to explain, oh, the red sun makes Superman strong because of gravity and this and that, and midichlorians, the less effective it gets to be. But what amazes me is not that we do it, but that we can't help ourselves. For some reason, we have to keep diluting the power of a myth with the second and the third.
I think I don't have a problem with Michael being Laurie's brother. I don't think it dilutes it too much. There's a purity to the family tie aspect of it. I think when you get into some of the later sequels where there's this whole idea of this cult and everything, that becomes less pure and somehow less interesting to me. At least with the family idea, that's very straightforward. It's there's a certain jagged logic to somebody wanting to slice and dice their way through their entire family.
Sure.
I think the reason why we want to know villainy is to a degree. I think there is that impulse to make something less frightening by getting to know it. It's the same thing I was saying earlier. The more you hang out with a monster, the more they're your buddy, and they become almost comforting. And I mean, certainly we've seen that. I think out of this entire generation of horror characters, the character that's been damaged the most by that was Freddy Krueger, who is probably the most evil out of any one of these characters. And by the end
molester, child killer, right?
Yeah, and by the end of the 80s, he was basically the crypt keeper.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Well, he even had his own show where he was crypt keeper.
That's really
He introduced it. Freddy's. Now I can't remember the name of it. But he had his own Freddy's Nightmares show, and he was. I mean, they made him that. I mean, it was funny. Like, it was kind of neat, but it doesn't make it better,
Like all kids who grew up in the 80s, I have a certain affection for that incarnation of Freddy Krueger, but he's certainly not as frightening.
No, I still like Dream Warriors. I don't know. I think it was
Dream Warriors is awesome.
In the theater. Like,
I feel like we can have two minds. I feel like there's the B-movie mind I have that loves how ridiculously complex these backstories can get. That loves that no matter how many ridiculous details you want to pile on, that Michael is hunting his family, and also there's a cult of Thorn, and there's these men in black who protect him, and there's all this stuff. The more of that crap you want to pile on, I just think it's great. It's bizarre and unbelievable and wonderful. And at the same time, there's also a part of me that likes the purity of first episodes, where you don't know any of that stuff and the importance is the mystery. And I also find myself sort of schizophrenically just sort of slamming from one to the other, depending on, what movie I'm watching and the day.
By the way, also never underestimate the power of some new person trying to make it smell like them, because they have ideas.
All right, let's talk about that one.
And then B, marketing, telling the director or somebody, some executive somewhere going, well, demographics blah through blah have really responded to Freddy. So, or pick your poison, whoever that might be, whatever flavor of the month or whatever.
Well, it's true.
That's to be honest with you, probably usually one of those two is why we get more something. Or, somebody's fixation, With Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween, it's like rednecks. We talked about that, So, hey, you know what this needs? This thing that I am totally enamored with. If I wrote something like Jason and I get to pitch Marvel characters every once in a while, guess what? We're probably going to put something in there that we really love. And some people would be along, if we ever got to do one of those, some people would be along for the ride, and other people, it would be the worst thing ever created because that's not how that character is. And I think
you can see exactly when that happens. Like somebody comes along and say, you pick up The Punisher. So this happens all the time in comics, and we benefit from the fact that we get to read all these interviews with the writers whenever they take it over. So somebody's taking over The Punisher and going, I'm taking over The Punisher, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have The Punisher die and then get taken over by the angel of death, and he's got to have an Ankh rune on his forehead, and he's going to start like being a guardian of hell. And you can kind of hear the editors going, "Oh, okay, all right, we're going to have undead rune punisher," and you can hear all the audience members going, "What?
Wait, did this happen?"
Oh yes, I'm not
Yeah, that actually
up.
did happen.
Oh God.
Tony, remind me one time to tell you a story about that when we're not recording.
Oh my goodness. All of this, okay, that explains. Wow. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure for somebody like that made the most sense. Like, this is going to be awesome, right? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And for a select number of people, like maybe a new reader was like, "This is awesome. He's the angel of death. Vietnam was so far away. Why do I care about the 80s?" Like you can see somebody, and we're like old fogies, and we're like, "No, Punisher's a vet, and his family was killed. This thing is the dumbest," right? And then somebody else comes along and goes, "No, man, he's the angel of death. How much more Punisher is that?" I don't agree with that, but can I fault somebody who buys the book because that's awesome? Then I think perhaps it's the same way. Like once you've built enough sequels to something and somebody's made it smell like them, then you're going to react like sometimes it really works for you and other times it doesn't.
Well, this is actually what I really like about the New Nightmare, about Wes Craven's New Nightmare, is that one actually brought up this really clever idea that original movies are nature's way of keeping demons at bay. But as movies continue and sequels continue, it dilutes the sort of, if you can imagine, it dilutes the spiritual box in which we are capturing the demon.
But let me tell you, by the way, that is one of the best metaphors ever for all of that and Hollywood in general.
Is it?
What's Craven's slouch?
Yeah, that was
pretty
fantastic.
magical, actually.
So we should talk about the end.
But wait, before you do that, I want to ask you, why can't it be, though, like The Simpsons? Why can't you just have, how The Simpsons just never changes? Like, that's why it's been around for however many decades it's been around for. It's just always the same. Like, why can't you have a movie or a character or whatever that never changes? It's just a new story every time.
It's funny that you say that because most people actually say, like, The Simpsons has been terrible since name a season.
Yeah.
All the way probably at 2. Like,
right.
I think it's later for most people.
It's still a hit. I mean, people still watch it.
I think the closest thing to that is James Bond.
Yeah,
yes,
I'll agree with you there.
That's right. Michael Myers, another way you could have continued this series was instead of Laurie, you could have continued Michael Myers taunting different sets of cheerleaders in different towns.
Right, or babysitters. Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds stupid, but really, honestly, how much do you need? Really, I would be fine.
What you have just in fact described is the Friday the 13th franchise.
That's exactly right. That is precisely right. So, Joya, if that's what you're looking for, I can hook you up. We have
Thank you.
This is the week for it as well, because I think all those movies are on TV this week.
What he's saying is, hey, Julia, do you want to be horribly scarred? Because I've got all the Friday the 13th you can stand. We can watch them back to back.
We have a rule in our house that I only watch horror movies if I have to watch them for the podcast. Otherwise, he's on his own.
Yeah.
I have long talked about the glorious combination of eating pumpkin pie and watching Friday the 13th movies on Halloween.
Oh, you have to write a blog.
That sounds awesome, actually.
It's pretty amazing.
That sounds really good.
Yes.
Now I kind of want pumpkin pie. Apropos to nothing on this podcast, but now that's a thing. Thanks, Drew.
My endorsement is pumpkin pie.
I'll second that.
So we should talk about the end. Like we were talking about, the reason why Michael is blinded and slashing around. Oh, by the way, all you missed, if we didn't talk about what all happened in the movie, he moves through the hospital and he kills pretty much everybody there until it's finally him and Laurie and Donald Pleasance once again. And
everybody there being 5 people, by the way.
Yes. So and
some babies.
Right.
No, I don't think he kills anybody.
He didn't kill the babies,
though.
But towards the end, Michael follows Donald Pleasance and Laurie into the surgery, this this operating room. And so what they decide to do is they're going to try to blow him up starting to spew every possible gas that is there into the operating room.
I like how they're not affected at all, and B,
right.
like at first they're just kind of distracting him though with hissing sounds.
No, he's affected. He's killed himself, Loomis. He died from that.
Well,
no. What I'm saying is he turns on ether and fills the room full of ether.
Yeah. And as they're doing that,
no, I don't think it's ether. Don't you think it's? I thought it was oxygen.
It says
Isn't it oxygen? It's not oxygen.
Yes, there is oxygen. There's also ether.
Right.
It says it in big letters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he turns on both, and then she turns on whatever, but nobody is affected one way or another. And like I said, at first they're just like distracting him because he goes through whatever hissing sounds, and then Loomis says, "Well, here's my chance," which I guess you can't throw something flammable. That's not going to work. He has to blow himself up because I guess they didn't figure there was going to be a sequel at all.
That's exactly right. The writers intend fully to kill Michael and Loomis here. Loomis says, "Laurie, go save yourself," and he uses the lighter that he got off of the cop. There was a lot of really loud business earlier with the cop who gives Loomis a cigarette, and the cop lights his own cigarette, and he holds out the lighter several times to light Loomis's cigarette, and never does, and he finally just goes, ugh, and he hands Loomis the lighter. So now we saw Loomis take a lighter.
By the way, all the cops in this are pretty awesome, actually. Like one guy, like the guy who does hey, I was 16 when this happened. Like the cops are pretty awesome, and actually the guy that Loomis threatens, he's like I need you to come in. He's he shot at this cop and got and holding the gun to him. And the guy's like, "What do I have to lose? Like, you're the crazy doctor with a gun to my head. Sure, I guess we'll fight a serial killer." The cops are fun.
Awesome, I do love all the business of this being a small town and the town square, and there are still kids trick or treating, all that stuff.
Well, and then what did you think about the scene where the poor kid in the same kind of mask, because for some reason this is a mask that they have more than once in the store, gets starts walking away from the crazy guy with the gun, and therefore Loomis starts shooting at him, and the guy gets steps out in the street and gets hit by a car, which runs into another car, and magically they both set on fire, which I've always been
there's
why?
There's an example of hey, we have a budget.
Exactly.
Car fire. Yes.
Yes.
Which does,
of course, what we need is awesome explosions.
Which does look really cool, by the way.
Well, I can only
prove makes no sense that the cops will be overdriving down a main street while searching for a serial killer, and then and it does play into what happens where they're like, "Hey, look, man, he's burned. This dude's gone." And they have the whole business with is it really him? We have to check the dental records. All that.
By the way, did you notice that was Ben Tramer?
Yeah,
the guy that
exactly.
Laurie has the crush on.
Yes.
Sorry, Laurie.
Laurie is so unlucky. She doesn't even know, I don't think, that she's going to get back to school on Monday.
Oh, no.
And,
well, how about not only is he dead and she crushed on him, but he was crushed by a car in a Michael Myers mask.
Yes.
Right.
Everyone Michael Myers themed. Ta-da. It's sucky. That's really bad.
Yeah.
Wow. But
right.
The car, you need a car fire. I mean,
so speaking of the explosions, though, yes, Ben Tramer appears to have pockets full of nitroglycerin, so they hit him and he blows up. But later, we're in the operations lab. They fill it up with gasoline. Laurie stumbles out, and Loomis uses the lighter he pawned off the cop and blows himself up. And Michael actually comes out of the explosion still on fire, and that was cool. That was actually very, very
I
cool.
do like that firewalk scene is.
Yeah, that was so Gus Fring, man.
Awesome. If you're gonna spend the money on something that looks cool like that, they got their money's worth out of that. That was pretty awesome. Because he's just you're like, holy crap. Well, he how long can you walk? And we find out there's a finite limit to just how messed up Michael Myers can get before he collapses. But wow, that did look really awesome.
And
a lot.
After that, what we have is Laurie gets put into another ambulance, I guess, to go to get another rock solid
to the hospital that actually has people in it.
Yeah.
And that's the end. Unless you watch it on TV. If you watch it on TV, there's a little coda where the boy that has been sort of crushing on her that works in the hospital is in the ambulance next to her. And so she goes, "Hey, we made it," which is kind of cool. They didn't do that in the movie version, but it was something that was filmed for TV.
That guy, I feel like that character was way underused because he slips, he goes into the room, finds one of the dead people in a pool of blood, and so he slips and falls and hits his head, and now he's lying in the pool of blood, and then he's gone for like the rest of the movie until she has snuck into a car and is like trying to hide from Michael, and he just happens to get in. That happens to be his car. He gets into the car, kind of looks at her, and then passes out. I mean, like, how useless.
He passes out because he has a concussion.
I know. I'm just saying that there could have been. They could have done more heroic stuff with him. Like he could have actually had.
The whole point is that Laurie is heroic in of herself. I don't think they want. I definitely don't think John Carpenter ever envisioned people saving her. Maybe other than possibly Loomis. I don't mean he has to be a damsel
in distress. I just mean he could have been a partner in, like Loomis is, a partner in fighting off this madman. I don't know.
I like his reaction actually. I like his reaction to like he kind of sees her because he's so out of it. Like I actually that's actually was like decent acting. Like he's like, well, you're here. This is weird. I've just encountered a madman and just seen a nurse with exsanguinated in a room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holy, wow. Okay, it's time to get away. But like the way he does it, I actually thought that was kind of a cool thing.
No, he was good. I'm not saying he wasn't good. I'm just saying that I would have liked to have seen him be a little bit more useful at some point.
Yeah.
But I want to say one thing real quick, but that was really funny that Jason said when we were watching the thing was that randomly, whenever they would turn on the radio, there would be all this like, Basil exposition stuff. And so he started calling the radio K-plot.
Yes.
Which cracked me up. He's like, they've tuned into K-plot.
Yeah, because anytime somebody turns on the radio, it says, 3 people were killed tonight. And, and yes, it was wonderful. It was like that skit, and it came from Hollywood, where Gilda Radner is running from the radio that's telling her about the escaped gorilla. It was
I love the scummy news reporter at the end who has the gall to try to interview her when they're when they're taking her to the ambulance. What do you think about tonight? Was that scary and stuff?
That's pretty realistic, though. That's exactly how reporters are.
No, exactly. Yeah. That's why I'm like, wow, that's way to go. Because that's exactly what happens, especially I think even more so now, but I also love that they're one of their bands is W War.
Yes.
Wow.
If only Bonnie Bedelia had appeared just to punch the reporter, like randomly.
That would have been awesome.
Okay, so we should probably wrap up. Now that I've been back, after Julia hosted last week, I'm back, and so once again we've overrun our hour by a good long shot. So let's get final thoughts. And this time, let's do it sort of in the opposite way. Let's do Tony, Drew, and then Julia, and then I'll go. So, final thoughts, Halloween 2, bearing in mind we'll be back next week with Halloween H2O.
For me, like I said, it's not a bad slasher movie. It doesn't stand out from a lot of other slasher movies at the time. Certainly, I remember thinking it was better previously, and that was years ago. And now I'm just kind of like, well, slasher stuff happens. It's not bad. Like there's some cool scenes. The good parts are really good, and the rest is kind of forgettable actually. But in the grand scheme of things, like I actually want, it would be fine to me actually if there was just Halloween and H2O. I think those are fine. Okay, Drew, final thoughts, Halloween 2?
I actually, because when I was watching it, and maybe it's the having talked about it, I've come around to liking it a bit more than when I was watching it earlier. I don't know what that says, but it's been a fun movie to talk about. And, even when we started out on the episode, I do like this movie. I don't think, obviously, nothing is going to be as good as the original. The original is a classic, but this is a decent follow-up. It's certainly a heck of a lot better than a lot of the things that follow, although next week we're doing my favorite sequel, and actually what I wish would have been the last Halloween movie ever made. But we'll get into that next week. This is a good movie to watch the week of Halloween.
A lot of things to think about with H2O, but we'll save them. And anything we missed here we'll be able to pick up there because it's also connected. Julia, final thoughts, Halloween 2, a movie you probably never envisioned you would wind up watching.
Again, I've seen it before, actually. No, I don't like slasher films, and I especially don't like slasher films that don't seem to have, like, a purpose. I found myself being really distressed that he was killing so many people. I just was like, why are you killing these people? Because there wasn't any kind of logic behind it like there are in some films, or even in the first film, where it's the idea that that slashers are supposed to kill, the teenagers who are having sex, or they're supposed to kill all the people who are abnormal, or they're supposed to kill whatever, anything like that. It's like he just kills, and I just find that distressing. So I don't enjoy films like that, and I didn't think this one had very much beyond that to save it and make it enjoyable for me. So I don't like this movie.
All right. I like it better than I remembered. I remembered being really bored by it, and when I watched it, I found it to clip along. And so now I feel more as though the first one is clearly a work. I think the first one is truly a great movie. It belongs in a list of great movies. I think this is just a horror film, but still enjoyable because it includes this great icon, Michael Myers. So, I give this one a solid middle recommend. If you're going to watch Halloween H2O, you could utterly skip it, but if you want to make a trilogy out of it, this one is a nice little one to put in the middle so that you can kind of, get more of what happened to Laurie on that fateful night. So it's a recommend. I've seen a lot of movies that I despised. I'd watched this, 10 times before I watched that one where Abe Lincoln hunts vampires. So,
man, I still love that movie.
Well, there you go. I know. All right. So let's do endorsements. What do you have for us, Tony? What's going on this week that you think is worth talking about?
Oh man, because of my furlough, I haven't really left the house that much.
Well, it doesn't literally have to be something.
No, I'm trying to think of what I saw or did this week that was awesome. And other than starting new music projects and stuff, I saw Rocktober Blood last night. They have a thing at the Draft House called Video Hate Squad, and in the grand scheme of horror movies that have to do with heavy metal, this one is, I think, pretty fun, even though some people disparage it. The killer is truly deranged, and that's pretty interesting. The soundtrack's pretty awesome from Sorcery, who, if people have seen the trailer for Stunt Rock or actually seen Stunt Rock, actually the trailer is the perfect trailer. It is harder if you just, that's what I would endorse, not only this movie Rocktober Blood, but the trailer for Stunt Rock. Mm-hmm. It encapsulates everything. In fact, I think the trailer might even be better than the movie itself.
I've seen the trailer for Stunt Rock many times.
It's amazing. It does have a guy fighting, kung fuing a leopard, or it's a tiger? I think it's a leopard.
It has a wizard, and that's kind of awesome.
Oh, it does have a wizard. I got to see Tim League as the wizard light pyro off and almost burn himself and shatter the wizard staff, which he was really like, holy crap! I hope Lucy in Disguise doesn't get mad at me for busting their wizard staff. But I don't know. I would go with Rocktober Blood, and had a big argument last night too with a friend who really dislikes the Fastway soundtrack to Trick or Treat. which I still think is an awesome soundtrack. However, Rocktober Blood has a really great soundtrack, so you should search that out because it's super metal.
Very cool. Drew, do you have any endorsements?
I got a lot of endorsements, surprisingly, since I too have barely been out of the house for financial reasons. But the internet provides entertainment for us in many ways.
The internet? You endorse the internet?
Well, I endorse my iPhone. How about that?
Yes.
The first thing I want to say is Adult Wednesday Addams by Melissa Hunter, YouTube skits. It's basically this woman. The idea is that as Wednesday Addams has grown up, she's out of the mansion. She's trying to do normal things like get a job, get an apartment, walk dogs, go on dates. But it's pitch perfect Addams Family humor, and it's so unbelievably funny. And if you're a fan of the Addams Family at all, I know that this doesn't sound like it would be that funny, but it is actually extremely funny.
No, I have to say that sounds wonderful. I mean, the moment you said Adult Wednesday Addams, I suddenly realized,
and
that's genius.
That's literally what it's called, and you can easily find it on YouTube.
I've already found it on YouTube. Yes. I'm
and
there.
There's a new episode every Wednesday. The other thing, which was plopped in my lap by a friend who is a big fan of the franchise and knew that I didn't have a lot to do this week, was Curse of Chucky, which is the direct-to-DVD, the new direct-to-DVD sequel, which I was going to skip because it was direct-to-DVD, and usually when a movie franchise hits that point, they've kind of gone off the rails. This is actually really, really, really entertaining, and by lowering the budget, they forced them to get creative, and they made what I never would have imagined, but a Chucky movie that is a callback to the old Dark House, and far more ambitious than I was expecting from a direct-to-DVD sequel to the Child's Play movies. So highly recommended if this Halloween week, if you want to, if you have a friend who has it, if you want to venture up to the Red Box and blow $1 on it, it's pretty good. In fact, it's, again, far better than I was expecting. Finally, personal endorsements. If you're in the Austin area this Saturday, All Souls Day, Day of the Dead, come to Flamingo Cantina for the Fall Shock Hop with the Humanoids, Bat City Surfers, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, and Danger Cakes. Jamie, who was with us last week and is with us periodically, my wife, is the front woman of that band. We also have a costume contest, so you can get one more use out of your Halloween costume, and a pinup contest. It is 18 and up, and doors are opening at 8. So please drop on by and kiss 2013's Halloween season goodbye with one last go.
Sweet.
I'll endorse that too, because it's awesome.
Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. I wish I were back in Austin. Julia, do you have the endorsements?
Well, the only thing I can think of, since it's Halloween this week, and happy Halloween to everyone, is that we happened upon a cute show that was Toy Story of Terror. It's a Toy Story, little mini Toy Story movie that's on TV, and it's just a little Halloween themed Toy Story episode, basically. So if you're a fan of the Toy Story series, you should look that up on, because I know they were showing it, I think, tonight and tomorrow night again. I can't remember what station, but anyway, so that's all.
Cool. All right. 3 really quick endorsements. First, book, Dr. Sleep. That's the new Stephen King novel that is the sequel to The Shining. It is fantastic. It was really, a surprising book. It doesn't redo The Shining. It's a very different thing. It's about Danny Torrance, grown up and dealing with, recovery from alcoholism and being a psychic out to kill some psychic crazies. And it is really good. And I read it for the Mile High Mile High horror fans who are having a book discussion of it coming up. So that's really cool. They actually do a lot of activities around Denver, which I've been impressed by. Podcast, welcome to Night Vale. All right. Some of you guys recommended this to me. Welcome to Night Vale blows my mind. It is one of the most creative podcasts I have heard in years. I am just in awe of these guys. They're my new writing heroes. It is funny. It is cool. I love it. I can't say enough about it. Welcome to Night Vale. It's like the most popular podcast on iTunes right now, so you should totally check that out. And finally, if you're going to watch something this week, I actually recommend I Walked with a Zombie, which, it'd be fun to go back to, that is a 1943 talkie about this woman who goes down to, I think it's Martinique, and, becomes involved with a mystery involving zombies who are used to work the sugarcane plantations. And it is just a gorgeous, gorgeous film, classic film. So you should check out I Walked with a Zombie. Those are my 3 endorsements for the week, which are all over the place and random, but yes.
Oh, by the way, I did think of one other thing that when I was filling out my Button-A-Thon application, one of the questions was, what's your favorite short? And I ended up going with The Lonesome Ghost, which is a Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck adventure, which is awesome. And I had on this little Viewmaster reel, which you could rewind and fast forward. And I think that's part of what made me an animator. I watched it over and over. But what I also, the close second was a Bugs Bunny short called Transylvania 65000.
Transylvania 65000.
Exactly. And you can find that around if you look for it. But there's a couple of parts of that I laugh every time exactly as much. So
Transylvania 65000 is also a truly terrible Jeff Goldblum movie. That
oh geez, I forgot about that.
Yes, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and I love that Bugs Bunny short. Absolutely.
So I would say during the Halloween season, you should watch that Bugs Bunny short because it's awesome. And if you can find it or have it, Lonesome Ghost, which is awesome too. So.
I mentioned earlier it came from Hollywood. Can I just mention that you guys should look for that on YouTube as well? Okay, I need to stop endorsing things. Right. I'm sorry. I'm just dumping my mind. What do I like right now? I'm telling you. I'll stop. All right. Halloween H2O is probably next week. Thank you so much for being on. Guys in the chat room, Darren, thank you a lot for your recommendations and your questions and everything. It was really good chatting before the show. And
happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Safe Halloween. Like us on Facebook. Let us know what you think of our new name. Review us on iTunes. Tell your friends. And we will be back next week. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.